It began as a whisper, a faint signal buried in the noise of the galaxy. Scientists at a remote observatory in Alaska intercepted the anomaly, its rhythmic pulse too deliberate to be natural. Dr. Lena Marquez, an expert in astrophysics, was the first to decode it. "This isn't background radiation," she told her team. "It's a message." As the team worked, a chilling truth emerged. The signal was not a greeting, it was a warning. Phrases like, "prepare," and "they are coming," appeared in the decoded patterns. A star map followed, marking Earth as the beacon's target. Before the world could process the revelation, the sky darkened. Massive constructs descended from orbit, their surfaces alive with crimson energy. Cities fell within hours, their remains corrupted into grotesque, living metal. Dr. Marquez found herself thrust into the heart of a crisis far beyond anything humanity had faced. The signal wasn't just a warning, she told government officials during an emergency meeting. It's part of something much bigger, something ancient. As Earth's defenses faltered, Lena discovered another piece of the puzzle, a device buried beneath an ancient monolith in the Nevada desert. Known only as the key, the crystalline artifact pulsed with a strange, rhythmic energy that matched the signal. "This might be the only chance we have," Lena said. The key's energy awakened something in the Nevada monolith. It projected a holographic star map and a network of 5 glowing nodes scattered across Earth. Each node was a focal point of ancient energy, capable of disrupting the crimson constructs consuming the planet. General Avery, a seasoned military leader, stood with Lena at the monolith site. "You're saying these nodes are our only hope?" "They're more than that," Lena replied. "If we can activate them, we can disrupt the construct's connection to the entity controlling them. But we'll need to move fast." The first node, located beneath the desert sands, was heavily corrupted by the construct's energy. Lena used the key to interface with the monolith, purging the corruption and activating the network. A burst of light erupted from the node, sending shockwaves across the area and disabling the nearest constructs. But the victory was short-lived. The Maw, the entity behind the crimson constructs, retaliated. Its tendrils of energy descended from the sky, destroying the Resistance's defenses and forcing them to retreat. "We've bought ourselves some time," Lena said, staring at the glowing node. "But the real fight is just beginning." The second node was buried deep in the frozen expanse of Siberia. As the Resistance forces traversed the icy terrain, they encountered landscapes warped by the Maw's corruption. Trees and wildlife had been transformed into twisted, metallic forms. "This isn't just destruction," Yates, an engineer, said. "It's assimilation." The Siberian node was guarded by massive constructs. Lena and her team used portable pulse emitters to hold back the crimson tendrils while she worked to stabilize the monolith. The battle was brutal. Soldiers fell to the construct's relentless attacks, and the freezing winds made every movement a struggle. Lena's hands shook as she placed the key into the monolith's slot, channeling its energy to purge the corruption. When the node activated, it emitted a wave of energy that shattered the constructs and cleared the skies. The network's holographic map updated, showing 2 nodes now glowing brightly. "We're making progress," Lena said, though exhaustion was evident in her voice. But the Maw's influence only grew stronger. Its crimson tendrils began spreading faster, and its presence loomed heavier over the remaining nodes. The third node lay hidden beneath the sands of the Sahara Desert, in a region overtaken by violent storms of red energy. The journey was grueling, with vehicles constantly breaking down under the strain of the Maw's corruption. The Resistance forces reached the node only to find it heavily fortified by constructs. The corrupted sands themselves seemed alive, lashing out at anything that moved. "This is worse than Siberia," Yates muttered. As Lena approached the node, the key's light dimmed, struggling against the overwhelming corruption. "It's too strong," she said, her voice filled with frustration. General Avery ordered a full-scale assault to buy Lena time. Soldiers fought valiantly, using every resource they had to hold the line. Lena worked furiously, bypassing the monolith's damaged systems and forcing the key to interface manually. The node activated in a blinding flash, purging the corruption and stabilizing the network further. But the cost was high. Many Resistance fighters didn't survive, and the key began to crack under the strain. "We've got 3, Lena said, staring at the updated map. 2 more to go. The final node was located in Antarctica, at the heart of the Maw's influence. The corrupted landscape was nearly impassable, with massive tendrils of crimson energy spreading across the ice. As the team reached the node, they found it almost entirely consumed by the Maw. The monoliths pulsed with red light, resisting Lena's attempts to activate them. "We're out of options," she said, her voice trembling. "The key won't hold." Yates stared at her. "What are you saying?" "I have to do this manually," Lena replied. "The Watchers built these nodes to respond to life. If I can channel my energy into the network, it might be enough to complete the activation." General Avery grabbed her arm. "That will kill you." Lena met his gaze. "If I don't, we all die." With no time to argue, Lena placed her hands on the central monolith. The key shattered as she poured her life force into the node. The network surged to life, emitting a final pulse that destroyed the Maw's tendrils and severed its connection to Earth. When the light faded, Lena was gone, her form consumed by the energy she had unleashed. The world began to heal, its corrupted regions slowly regenerating. The activated nodes remained as silent sentinels, their light a reminder of Lena's sacrifice. The holographic map projected by the nodes showed a faint signal emanating from deep space, a beacon sent by the Watchers, inviting humanity to take its next step. The Lena Marquez, humanity's first interstellar ship, launched years later, carrying Yates and a crew of explorers. Their mission, to follow the Watchers' signal and discover what lay beyond the stars. As the ship disappeared into the void, humanity looked to the sky, united by the memory of those who had fought and sacrificed to save their world. The drive to Nevada felt like crossing into another world. Lena and Ravi left the chaos of Anchorage behind, navigating abandoned highways and desolate towns. News of the invasion had spread faster than the constructs themselves, and most people had fled inland or taken refuge in makeshift shelters. But there was no escaping the shadow of the massive object in Earth's orbit. It loomed overhead like a second moon, its presence a constant reminder of the danger that surrounded them. "Are you sure about this?" Ravi asked, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Lena glanced at the tablet in her lap, its screen displaying the coordinates from the signal. "It's the only lead we have," she replied. "If these coordinates point to something that can help us understand what's happening, we have to follow them." The signal had shifted again during their journey, becoming stronger and more insistent. It wasn't just a map, it felt like a call, a force pulling them toward their destination. After 2 days of driving, they arrived at the coordinates, a stretch of barren desert marked only by a chain-link fence and a weathered sign that read, "Restricted Area, U.S. Government Property." "This doesn't exactly scream alien artifact," Ravi muttered. Lena ignored him, stepping out of the car and scanning the horizon. The air was eerily still, and the ground beneath her feet vibrated faintly, as if something deep below was alive. "This is it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She pulled a handheld scanner from her bag, its screen lighting up as it detected the energy source emanating from beneath the sand. The coordinates led them to a small metal hatch, half buried and rusted with age. "Help me with this," Lena said, motioning to Ravi. Together they pried the hatch open, revealing a ladder that descended into darkness. "You first," Ravi said, his voice shaky. Lena rolled her eyes and climbed down, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. The ladder led to a narrow tunnel that extended into the earth, its walls reinforced with steel beams. As they moved deeper underground, the faint vibration grew stronger. The air became warmer, charged with an electric hum that made the hairs on Lena's arms stand on end. "What is this place?" Ravi asked, his voice echoing in the confined space. "A relic," Lena replied. "Something left behind for us to find." The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber, its walls covered in strange, glowing symbols. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and atop it rested an object unlike anything Lena had ever seen. It was crystalline, about the size of a human heart, and pulsing with a rhythmic light that matched the signal. "The key," Lena whispered, stepping closer. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing the surface of the artifact. The moment she touched it, the chamber came alive. The symbols on the walls flared brightly, and a holographic projection filled the room, displaying a map of Earth. "What the hell?" Ravi said, backing away. The map showed 5 points of light scattered across the globe, each one connected by faint lines of energy. Around them, the red corruption of the constructs spread like a cancer, consuming entire regions. "These are the nodes," Lena said, her mind racing. "They're part of a network. If we can activate them, we might be able to fight back." The hologram shifted, displaying a message in a language Lena couldn't read. As she stared at it, the words seemed to rearrange themselves in her mind, becoming clear. "The network is dormant. Activate the nodes to disrupt the connection." "Disrupt the connection?" Ravi asked, peering at the hologram. "The constructs aren't acting on their own," Lena explained. "They're connected to whatever that thing is in orbit. If we can disrupt the connection, we might be able to stop them." Before Ravi could respond, the ground shook violently, and a deep, resonant hum filled the chamber. "They've found us," Lena said, grabbing the key. "We have to go." As Lena and Ravi scrambled back up the ladder, the vibrations grew stronger, and the desert above them was illuminated by a sickly red glow. Outside, a construct loomed over the horizon, its jagged form glowing with crimson energy. It was smaller than the others Lena had seen in videos, but it moved with the same terrifying precision. "Get in the car," she shouted, clutching the key tightly. Ravi didn't need to be told twice. The moment they were inside, he floored the accelerator, the tires kicking up a cloud of dust as they sped away. The construct followed, its tendrils lashing out and striking the ground with devastating force. One hit the rear of the car, sending it skidding off the road. "Keep going!" Lena yelled, bracing herself as Ravi fought to regain control. The key in her hands pulsed brighter, its light intensifying as if responding to the construct's energy. Without thinking, Lena pointed it at the pursuing entity. A beam of light shot from the key, striking the construct and causing it to convulse violently. The construct let out a deafening roar before collapsing into a heap of molten metal. "What the hell just happened?" Ravi asked, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Lena stared at the key, her mind racing. "It's not just a map, it's a weapon." As the desert fell silent, Lena realized the significance of what they had found. The key wasn't just their guide. It was humanity's last hope. "We have to activate the nodes," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "It's the only way to stop them." With no time to lose, the two set out for the first node, knowing the constructs wouldn't let them complete their mission without a fight. The journey to the first node took Lena and Ravi deeper into the Nevada desert, to a site the hologram had marked as critical. The coordinates led them to a stretch of barren land surrounded by rocky outcrops, but there was no visible sign of a node. No monoliths, no structures, just sand and silence. "Are we sure this is the place?" Ravi asked, wiping sweat from his brow as he surveyed the landscape. Lena studied the hologram projected by the key, its light pulsing steadily. "This is it," she said, stepping out of the car. "The node is here. It's just hidden." The key grew warmer in her hand as she moved closer to the center of the coordinates. Its light intensified, illuminating the ground beneath her feet. Suddenly, the earth trembled and a section of the desert collapsed, revealing a hidden staircase carved into the rock. "Found it," Lena said, her voice filled with both excitement and dread. The two descended into the darkness, their flashlights cutting through the thick dust that filled the air. The staircase led to a vast underground chamber, its walls covered in glowing symbols, similar to those in the first monolith chamber. At the center of the room stood a massive structure, a series of interconnected pillars arranged in a circular pattern. The pillars pulsed faintly with energy, but their light was dim, flickering as though struggling to stay alive. "This must be the node," Lena said, approaching the central pillar. The key pulsed more intensely as she drew closer, its energy syncing with the structure. Lena placed it into a slot at the base of the pillar, and the entire chamber came alive. The walls glowed brighter, and the pillars emitted beams of light that connected in a lattice above them. "What's happening?" Ravi asked, shielding his eyes. "It's activating," Lena replied, her voice trembling with awe. But the activation triggered an immediate response. The chamber shook violently, as tendrils of red energy erupted from the walls, snaking toward the central pillar. The corruption had already infiltrated the node, and it wasn't going to let them complete their task without a fight. "Ravi, get back," Lena shouted, pulling a pulse emitter from her bag. The portable device emitted a burst of blue energy, repelling the tendrils temporarily. But the corruption was relentless, its tendrils growing thicker and more aggressive with each passing moment. "Can you stabilize it?" Ravi yelled, firing a makeshift weapon at the advancing corruption. "I'm trying," Lena said, her fingers flying across the control panel at the base of the pillar. "The node is fighting me. The corruption is too deep." The key pulsed violently, its light flickering as it struggled to maintain its connection to the node. Lena's heart pounded as she realized the stakes. If they failed to stabilize the node, the entire network could collapse before it even had a chance to work. She took a deep breath, focusing her thoughts. The symbols on the walls seemed to respond to her determination, rearranging themselves into a new configuration. With a final adjustment to the controls, Lena channeled the key's energy directly into the node. The chamber erupted with light, and a shock wave rippled outward, obliterating the tendrils of corruption. The pillars emitted a harmonious hum as the beams of light stabilized, forming a complete lattice above them. "It's done," Lena said, her voice barely audible over the sound of the humming node. The hologram projected by the key updated, showing the first node glowing brightly on the map. The corruption around it had receded, creating a small pocket of safety in the midst of the chaos. But Lena's relief was short-lived. The chamber began to shake again, and a deafening roar echoed through the underground space. "What now?" Ravi shouted, his eyes wide with fear. Above them, the ceiling cracked as a massive construct forced its way into the chamber. Its jagged, insect-like form glowed with crimson energy, and its movements were impossibly fast. "It knows what we're doing," Lena said, grabbing the pulsimeter. "We need to get out of here." The construct lashed out with its tendrils, tearing through the chamber as Lena and Ravi ran for the staircase. The pulsimeter slowed it down, but it wasn't enough to stop it. "Go, go, go!" Lena shouted, pushing Ravi ahead of her. They scrambled up the stairs, the ground collapsing behind them as the construct pursued them relentlessly. By the time they reached the surface, the desert was alive with red energy, the construct's tendrils ripping through the earth. Lena turned and fired the pulsimeter one last time, striking the construct and causing it to convulse. The node's energy surged in response, emitting a powerful burst of light that enveloped the construct and disintegrated it. The desert fell silent once more, the air heavy with the scent of scorched earth. "We did it," Ravi said, collapsing onto the sand. Lena looked at the hologram, which now showed the first node as a beacon of hope amidst the spreading corruption. "One down," she said, her voice steady. 4 to go. She knew the next nodes would be even harder to reach, but there was no turning back. Humanity's survival depended on completing the network, no matter the cost. The icy winds of Siberia howled against the convoy of resistance vehicles making their way across the desolate tundra. The once pristine landscape had been transformed into a frozen wasteland of twisted, crimson-veined ice. The Maw's corruption had spread deep into this region, consuming everything in its path. Lena sat in the lead vehicle, the key resting in her lap. Its glow was dimmer now, flickering like a dying flame. She stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass as the horizon blurred into a field of jagged, unnatural formations. "This place used to be a forest," Yates, the engineer, said from the driver's seat. "Now it looks like another planet." "It's not just consuming the land," Lena replied. "It's rewriting it. The Maw isn't here to coexist. It's here to transform everything into itself." The convoy stopped near the coordinates marked by the key. The second node was buried beneath a ridge of corrupted ice, its location betrayed by faint pulses of blue light struggling against the crimson tide. Lena stepped out into the freezing cold, her boots crunching against the icy ground as she surveyed the area. "Are we sure it's even active?" Yates asked, his breath visible in the frigid air. "It has to be," Lena said. "The network relies on all 5 nodes. If this one's been compromised, the others won't hold for long." As the resistance forces set up portable pulse emitters to create a perimeter, Lena approached the ridge, the key growing warmer in her hands. She could feel the node's energy, faint but still alive, calling out for activation. "This is going to be harder than Nevada," she muttered to herself. The battle for the node. The excavation team worked quickly, using laser drills to cut through the layers of corrupted ice. The air was filled with the sharp crackle of energy as the crimson tendrils reacted violently, lashing out at the workers. "Emitters online!" General Avery shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The portable devices fired bursts of blue energy, holding the corruption at bay. Lena crouched near the exposed monoliths, brushing away chunks of ice to reveal the intricate symbols carved into their surfaces. The corruption had taken root deep within the node, its crimson veins pulsing angrily as if aware of her presence. "It's already compromised," Yates said, joining her. "I know," Lena replied, "but we can still stabilize it." She inserted the key into the central monolith, and the node emitted a weak pulse of light. The symbols on the monoliths flickered, struggling to synchronize with the key's energy. "Come on," Lena whispered, her hands moving across the control panel at the base of the monolith. The ground trembled as the corruption intensified, its tendrils converging on the node. The pulse emitters struggled to repel the onslaught, their energy fading under the relentless assault. "We're losing containment," Avery shouted. Lena ignored the chaos, focusing entirely on the symbols. The key's light grew brighter, pushing back against the corruption. But the effort was taking its toll. The artifact's crystalline surface began to crack under the strain. "Lena, we've got incoming," Yates yelled, pointing to the horizon. A massive construct emerged from the storm, its jagged form glowing with crimson energy. It moved with terrifying speed, its tendrils lashing out at the resistance forces. "Hold it off," Avery ordered, rallying his soldiers. The resistance opened fire, using everything from conventional weapons to improvised alien tech. But the construct was relentless, cutting through their defenses with brutal efficiency. Lena's heart pounded as the node emitted another pulse, its energy synchronizing with the key. The symbols on the monoliths began to glow, their light spreading across the chamber. "Just a little more," she said through gritted teeth. The construct roared, its crimson energy surging as it prepared to strike the node. "Not today," Yates muttered, grabbing a pulse emitter and running toward the creature. He fired the device at point-blank range, hitting the construct's core. The resulting explosion knocked him off his feet, but gave Lena the time she needed. The node emitted a final blinding pulse, purging the corruption in a wave of blue light. The construct disintegrated, its form collapsing into ash as the node stabilized. "It's online," Lena shouted, collapsing to her knees. The hologram projected by the key updated, showing 2 nodes now active. The corruption surrounding Siberia began to recede, leaving behind a landscape scarred but intact. The icy winds of Siberia howled against the convoy of resistance vehicles making their way across the desolate tundra. The once pristine landscape had been transformed into a frozen wasteland of twisted, crimson-veined ice. The Maw's corruption had spread deep into this region, consuming everything in its path. Lena sat in the lead vehicle, the key resting in her lap. Its glow was dimmer now, flickering like a dying flame. She stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass as the horizon blurred into a field of jagged, unnatural formations. "This place used to be a forest," Yates, the engineer, said from the driver's seat. "Now it looks like another planet." "It's not just consuming the land," Lena replied. "It's rewriting it. The Maw isn't here to coexist. It's here to transform everything into itself." The convoy stopped near the coordinates marked by the key. The second node was buried beneath a ridge of corrupted ice, its location betrayed by faint pulses of blue light struggling against the crimson tide. Lena stepped out into the freezing cold, her boots crunching against the icy ground as she surveyed the area. "Are we sure it's even active?" Yates asked, his breath visible in the frigid air. "It has to be," Lena said. "The network relies on all 5 nodes. If this one's been compromised, the others won't hold for long." As the resistance forces set up portable pulse emitters to create a perimeter, Lena approached the ridge. the key growing warmer in her hands. She could feel the node's energy, faint but still alive, calling out for activation. "This is going to be harder than Nevada," she muttered to herself. The battle for the node. The excavation team worked quickly, using laser drills to cut through the layers of corrupted ice. The air was filled with the sharp crackle of energy as the crimson tendrils reacted violently, lashing out at the workers. "Emitters online!" General Avery shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The portable devices fired bursts of blue energy, holding the corruption at bay. Lena crouched near the exposed monoliths, brushing away chunks of ice to reveal the intricate symbols carved into their surfaces. The corruption had taken root deep within the node, its crimson veins pulsing angrily as if aware of her presence. "It's already compromised," Yates said, joining her. "I know," Lena replied, "but we can still stabilize it." She inserted the key into the central monolith, and the node emitted a weak pulse of light. The symbols on the monoliths flickered, struggling to synchronize with the key's energy. "Come on," Lena whispered, her hands moving across the control panel at the base of the monolith. The ground trembled as the corruption intensified, its tendrils converging on the node. The pulse emitters struggled to repel the onslaught, their energy fading under the relentless assault. "We're losing containment," Avery shouted. Lena ignored the chaos, focusing entirely on the symbols. The key's light grew brighter, pushing back against the corruption. But the effort was taking its toll. The artifact's crystalline surface began to crack under the strain. "Lena, we've got incoming," Yates yelled, pointing to the horizon. A massive construct emerged from the storm, its jagged form glowing with crimson energy. It moved with terrifying speed, its tendrils lashing out at the resistance forces. "Hold it off," Avery ordered, rallying his soldiers. The resistance opened fire, using everything from conventional weapons to improvised alien tech. But the construct was relentless, cutting through their defenses with brutal efficiency. Lena's heart pounded as the node emitted another pulse, its energy synchronizing with the key. The symbols on the monoliths began to glow, their light spreading across the chamber. "Just a little more," she said through gritted teeth. The construct roared, its crimson energy surging as it prepared to strike the node. "Not today," Yates muttered, grabbing a pulse emitter and running toward the creature. He fired the device at point-blank range, hitting the construct's core. The resulting explosion knocked him off his feet, but gave Lena the time she needed. The node emitted a final blinding pulse, purging the corruption in a wave of blue light. The construct disintegrated, its form collapsing into ash as the node stabilized. "It's online," Lena shouted, collapsing to her knees. The hologram projected by the key updated, showing 2 nodes now active. The corruption surrounding Siberia began to recede, leaving behind a landscape scarred but intact. The victory came at a cost. Several resistance fighters had been lost in the battle, and the portable emitters were nearly depleted. Yates limped back to the group, his face pale but determined. "Don't do that again," Lena said, helping him to his feet. "No promises," he replied with a weak smile. General Avery surveyed the battlefield, his expression grim. "We're running out of resources, and the Maw isn't going to let us do this again without a fight." Lena stared at the glowing node, the key's light flickering faintly in her hands. She could feel the strain on the artifact. It wasn't designed to endure this much use. "The next node is in the Sahara," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll make it work." Yates shook his head. "You're pushing this thing too hard, Lena. If the key breaks, it won't break," she interrupted. "It can't." But deep down, Lena knew they were on borrowed time. The Maw was adapting, and each activation pushed the key closer to its limit. As the convoy prepared to leave, Lena took one last look at the node, its light a small beacon of hope in the frozen wasteland. "We're not done yet," she said. With the weight of the mission pressing down on them, the team set out for the Sahara, knowing the next battle would be their toughest yet. The Sahara stretched endlessly before them, a sea of shifting sands under a sky heavy with red-tinted clouds. The Maw's corruption had transformed the once pristine desert into an alien battlefield. Tendrils of crimson energy snaked through the dunes, pulsating with an unnatural rhythm, and storms raged in the distance, casting lightning into the scarred land. The convoy of resistance vehicles trudged forward, their engines straining against the shifting terrain. Lena sat in the lead vehicle, her eyes fixed on the key. Its glow was faint and irregular, the cracks along its surface deepening with each passing hour. "Status update." General Avery's voice crackled over the comms. "We're about 10 clicks from the coordinates," Yates replied. He glanced at Lena. "Assuming the key holds out." "It will," Lena said firmly, though she wasn't sure if she was trying to convince Yates or herself. The journey had been brutal. The corrupted environment interfered with their equipment, and the relentless storms forced frequent stops. Supplies were dwindling, and the exhaustion was palpable among the crew. As they crested a ridge, the team got their first glimpse of the node's location. Beneath the sands, partially obscured by shifting dunes, lay a massive network of monoliths. Their blue light flickered weakly, barely visible against the crimson haze. "That's it," Lena said, leaning forward. "It's worse than Siberia." Yates muttered. "The corruption's already taken root." General Avery ordered the convoy to stop a safe distance from the site. The team disembarked, bracing themselves against the heat and the static-charged air. Portable pulse emitters were deployed to create a perimeter, though their effectiveness against the corruption had diminished with each successive mission. "We need to move fast," Lena said, approaching the nearest monolith. The key pulsed faintly as she neared, resonating with the node's energy. Yates scanned the area, his expression grim. The entire system's destabilized, the corruptions wrapped around the core. Lena crouched near the central monolith, brushing away layers of sand to reveal its control interface. The symbols carved into its surface were faint and distorted, their meaning obscured by the crimson veins that pulsed across the stone. "This is going to be delicate," she said, inserting the key into a slot at the base of the monolith. The node responded immediately, emitting a weak pulse of light. The symbols flickered to life, rearranging themselves as Lena worked to calibrate the controls. But the corruption pushed back, its tendrils surging toward the monoliths with renewed aggression. "Emitters online!" Avery shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. The portable devices fired bursts of blue energy, holding the tendrils at bay. But the corrupted sands themselves seemed alive, lashing out at the resistance forces with unpredictable fury. "Lena, how much longer?" Yates yelled, firing his weapon at an advancing tendril. "I don't know," Lena snapped, her hands flying over the controls. The key was overheating, its surface glowing dangerously bright. The ground shook violently, and a deafening roar echoed across the desert. A massive construct emerged from the storm, its form more grotesque and massive than any they'd encountered before. Its jagged body bristled with crimson energy, and its tendrils lashed out with devastating force. "Defensive positions," Avery bellowed, rallying the team. The resistance fought valiantly, using everything from pulse emitters to improvised explosives. But the construct was relentless, cutting through their ranks with terrifying precision. "It's targeting the node," Yates shouted. Lena's heart raced as the symbols on the monolith began to stabilize. The node's energy was syncing with the key, but the process was agonizingly slow. "We're out of time," Yates yelled, grabbing a pulse emitter and running toward the construct. The resistance regrouped, their numbers diminished, but their resolve unbroken. Yates was alive, though badly injured. He gave Lena a weak smile as she helped him to his feet. "You're insane, you know that?" he said, wincing as he stood. "Takes one to know one," Lena replied, her voice thick with emotion. The hologram projected by the key updated, showing 3 nodes now active. The corruption surrounding the Sahara began to retreat, though the faint shadow of the maw still lingered on the map. "We're making progress," General Avery said, his tone grim. "But the maw's adapting. The next one's going to be worse." Lena stared at the key, its surface cracked and dim. She could feel its energy waning, but there was no time to stop. The next node, buried beneath the ice of Antarctica, was their final and most dangerous target. "We'll make it," Lena said, her voice filled with determination. "We have to." The team packed up their equipment and prepared for the journey south, knowing the maw wouldn't let them complete their mission without a fight. As the convoy moved out, Lena looked back at the glowing node, its light a beacon of hope in the vast desert. "We're almost there," she whispered to herself. Antarctica was a land of extremes, its icy expanse stretching endlessly under a pale gray sky. But now, the corruption of the maw had transformed it into a battlefield unlike anything the Resistance had faced before. The ice was fractured and jagged, glowing faintly with crimson veins that pulsed like the heartbeat of some malevolent entity. Storms raged across the frozen tundra, casting red lightning against the horizon. The Resistance's convoy arrived at the edge of the maw's strongest influence, where the air crackled with energy, and the ground beneath their feet trembled as if alive. General Avery stepped out of the lead vehicle, scanning the horizon through his binoculars. "There," he said, pointing toward a cluster of massive ice formations. "That's where the node is buried." Lena studied the hologram projected by the key. The final node was marked by a bright pulse of light, but the corruption around it was suffocating. The symbols on the key were erratic, their once steady glow flickering like a dying flame. "It's almost completely compromised," she said, her voice heavy with tension. "If we don't activate it soon, the entire network could collapse." "Then we don't stop," Avery said. "Let's move." The convoy pressed forward, their vehicles struggling against the ice and the relentless winds. Tendrils of red energy snaked through the frozen landscape, lashing out at anything that moved. The Resistance deployed portable pulse emitters, creating temporary safe zones as they advanced. "This is worse than anything we've seen," Yates said, his voice barely audible over the storm. "It's because the maw knows we're close," Lena replied. "This is its last line of defense." The team reached the coordinates, finding the node buried beneath a massive glacier corrupted by crimson veins. The monoliths were almost completely consumed, their faint blue glow struggling against the overwhelming red. "Get those emitters set up," Avery barked, directing his soldiers. The Resistance scrambled to establish a perimeter, using everything at their disposal to hold back the corruption. The air grew heavier as the maw's tendrils thickened, their movements faster and more aggressive than ever. Lena approached the central monolith, the key vibrating in her hand. She could feel its energy waning, its light dimming with every step. "This is it," she said, inserting the key into the monolith's slot. The node responded immediately, emitting a weak pulse of light. The symbols on the monolith flickered, syncing with the key's energy. But the corruption surged in response, its tendrils converging on the node with terrifying speed. "We've got incoming," Yates shouted, pointing to the horizon. A massive construct emerged from the storm, its form towering over the battlefield. It was larger and more complex than any they had encountered before, its crimson core pulsing like a living heart. "Hold the line," Avery yelled, rallying the Resistance forces. The battle erupted in chaos. Soldiers fired their weapons at the advancing tendrils, while pulse emitters blasted bursts of blue energy to push back the corruption. The construct retaliated with devastating force, its tendrils ripping through the Resistance's defenses. Lena worked furiously at the control panel, her fingers flying across the symbols as she tried to stabilize the node. The key's light flickered erratically, and cracks spread across its surface. "It's not enough," she shouted, her voice filled with desperation. Yates ran to her side, his weapon in hand. "What do we do?" Lena hesitated, her mind racing. The node was too far gone. The corruption had infiltrated its core. There was only one way to complete the activation, and it would cost everything. "I have to interface directly," she said, her voice trembling. "What?" "No." Yates grabbed her arm. "That'll kill you." "If I don't, we all die," Lena replied, pulling free. Avery turned to her, his expression grim. "Are you sure?" Lena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Tell them it was worth it." Lena placed her hands on the central monolith, her body trembling as the key shattered into fragments. A surge of energy coursed through her, merging her life force with the node's failing systems. The monoliths erupted with light, their blue glow overpowering the crimson corruption. Tendrils of red energy disintegrated, and the construct let out a deafening roar as it collapsed into ash. The node emitted a final pulse, sending a shockwave across the frozen tundra. The corruption retreated, leaving the land scarred but free. When the light faded, Lena was gone. Yates fell to his knees, staring at the empty space where she had stood. Avery placed a hand on his shoulder, his voice heavy with grief. "She saved us." The hologram projected by the nodes showed the network fully active, its light spreading across the planet. The Maw's influence had been severed, and the massive entity began to collapse in orbit, its tendrils disintegrating into nothingness. Earth was safe, but the cost of victory was etched into the hearts of those who had survived. Months later, as the world began to rebuild, a new signal appeared on the network, a beacon emanating from deep space. It was faint but deliberate, calling humanity to take its next step. Yates stood in the command center of the Resistance's new headquarters, staring at the star map. "This isn't the end," he said softly. "It's just the beginning." The first interstellar ship, the Lena Marquez, launched a year later. Its mission to follow the signal and uncover the mysteries left behind by the Watchers. As the ship disappeared into the void, humanity looked to the stars, united by the memory of the woman who had given everything to save them. The Lena Marquez sailed silently through the void, its engines powered by technology derived from the Watchers' nodes. On board, a diverse crew of explorers, scientists, and engineers worked tirelessly to decode the mysterious signal that had emerged after the Maw's defeat. Dr. Ravi Yates, now captain of the expedition, stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic star map. The signal's source lay in the uncharted depths of the galaxy, far beyond any human reach before now. "Coordinates locked," announced Lieutenant Mira Zhao, the ship's navigator. Yates nodded, his thoughts drifting to Lena Marquez. Her sacrifice had united Earth and forged a path into the stars, but her work wasn't finished. "This one's for you, Lena," he whispered as the ship accelerated into the unknown. After months of travel, the Lena Marquez arrived in a star system unlike anything the crew had imagined. The central star was surrounded by colossal crystalline structures, each one pulsating with energy that matched the signal's frequency. "Are those alive?" Zhao asked, her voice tinged with awe. The ship's scanners detected intricate patterns of energy flowing through the structures, their rhythms resembling neural activity. "They're not alive in the traditional sense," Yates replied. "But they're definitely more than just structures. These could be the Watchers' gateways." The signal intensified as they approached the largest structure, a massive sphere surrounded by orbiting fragments. The sphere emitted beams of light that formed a lattice across the system, connecting the smaller structures. "It's a network," said Dr. Amara Singh, the ship's xenolinguist. "Just like the nodes on Earth." As the ship moved closer, a beam of light enveloped it, pulling it gently toward the sphere. The crew braced for impact, but instead of collision, the ship passed seamlessly through the surface. Inside, the crew found themselves in a vast chamber filled with glowing symbols and shifting patterns of light. At the center of the chamber hovered a being of pure energy, its form constantly changing as if it were made of flowing currents. "Welcome," the being said, its voice resonating in their minds. "You have proven your resolve. Now, you must decide your purpose." The Watcher explained the nature of its existence. It was part of a vast collective tasked with maintaining balance in the galaxy. The Maw was just one of many threats that disrupted this balance, and the Watchers relied on species like humanity to rise against such challenges. "You are no longer observers," the Watcher said. "You are participants. The survival of others depends on your choices." A hologram appeared, displaying dozens of star systems. Some glowed green, indicating thriving civilizations. Others pulsed red, marked as fallen or consumed. Yellow systems flickered uncertainly, their fates hanging in the balance. "These are the paths of the Watchers," the entity continued. "Green worlds have endured. Red worlds have fallen. Yellow worlds teeter on the edge. Your task is to intervene where you can and to learn from what you cannot." Yates stepped forward. "What about Earth? Is it safe now?" "For now," the Watcher replied. "But balance is fragile. The Maw was one force among many. There are others, greater, more ancient, waiting for the chance to strike." The crew was given a choice: return to Earth and use the knowledge they had gained to strengthen their defenses, or venture further into the galaxy to assist struggling civilizations. The decision was made. The Lena Marquez would continue its mission, answering the Watcher's call and exploring the galaxy's most vulnerable systems. Their first destination was a yellow-marked star system, where a planet showed signs of advanced civilization, but its energy readings were erratic. As the ship approached, the crew discovered a world shrouded in darkness, its surface covered by massive mechanical structures. "Scans indicate the planet is still inhabited," Singh said, "but the population is concentrated underground. The surface has been overtaken by something." The crew descended to the planet's surface, navigating through towering spires of metal that emitted faint rhythmic pulses. The structures resembled the constructs the Maw had sent to Earth, but these were older and more decayed. "It's like they were left here," Yates said, scanning the area. As they ventured deeper, the crew encountered survivors, a small group of humanoid beings who spoke in fragmented sentences and displayed signs of physical and mental deterioration. "They're not just hiding from something," Singh said, examining one of the survivors. "They've been changed by it." The survivors spoke of a force they called the Architects, ancient beings who had constructed the machines to harvest their planet's energy. The machines had gone rogue, consuming everything in their path and leaving the survivors to fend for themselves. The Lena Marquez crew worked to understand the source of the machine's power. They discovered a central hub deep beneath the planet's surface, a massive core that controlled the mechanical network. "This is the same energy signature as the Maw," Yates said, his voice filled with dread. "It's connected." The core activated as the crew approached, and the machines began to stir. The crew fought desperately to disable the core, using technology derived from the Watcher's nodes. Lena's sacrifice echoed in Yates's mind as he led the charge, determined to honor her legacy. After a grueling battle, the core was deactivated, and the machines fell silent. The survivors emerged from their underground shelters, their gratitude palpable despite their losses. "This is what we're here for," Yates said, watching as the planet's first rays of sunlight broke through the mechanical haze. But the victory came with a revelation. The core contained data that pointed to a greater force, the Architects themselves. They were ancient creators, their machines designed not just to harvest energy but to control entire civilizations. "They're still out there," Singh said, her voice trembling, "and they're watching." The Lena Marquez moved steadily through uncharted space, the void stretching endlessly before it. The data recovered from the rogue machine's core pointed toward a distant star system, a place where the Architect's influence seemed to linger. It was an invitation and a warning. On the bridge, Yates stood with Dr. Amara Singh and Lieutenant Mira Jao, studying the star map projected by the Watcher's technology. The destination was marked by a flickering yellow glow, indicating a system teetering on the edge of collapse. "This could be a trap," Zhao said, her tone cautious. "Or it could be the key to understanding the Architects," Singh replied. "If we're going to stop this from happening to other worlds, we need to know what we're dealing with." Yates nodded. "Set course for the system. Whatever's out there, we need answers." The Lena Marquez exited hyperspace near Droskafu, a planet orbiting a dying star. The system was shrouded in a strange energy field that interfered with the ship's sensors, but visual scans revealed the surface of the planet covered in vast geometric structures. "They're similar to the machines we encountered before," Singh said, analyzing the data. "But these are dormant." The crew descended to the planet's surface, landing near the largest structure, a towering spire that stretched miles into the sky. Its surface was smooth and reflective, with faint pulses of light running through its veins like a heartbeat. "This place gives me the creeps," Zhao muttered as they exited the ship. Lena's absence was keenly felt as Yates led the team. He carried the weight of her sacrifice, determined to honor her legacy by uncovering the truth about the Architects. Inside the spire, the team found themselves in a labyrinth of corridors, the walls alive with shifting patterns of light. The air was heavy with an electric hum, and every step echoed ominously. "What is this place?" Singh whispered, her voice tinged with awe. "A factory," Yates replied grimly. "Or worse." As the team moved deeper into the structure, they discovered chambers filled with partially constructed machines. Unlike the rogue constructs they had encountered before, these machines were incomplete, their forms twisted and skeletal. They're waiting for something, Zhao said, examining one of the dormant machines. The team reached the core of the spire, a massive chamber dominated by a pulsating orb of energy suspended in the air. The orb emitted rhythmic pulses that matched the interference field surrounding the planet. "This is the source," Singh said, her hands trembling as she scanned the orb. "It's generating the signal that's keeping the machines dormant." As they approached the orb, the chamber trembled, and the walls came alive with light. A voice echoed through the space, deep and resonant, speaking in a language that none of them recognized. "What is it saying?" Zhao asked, her weapon raised. Singh stared at the shifting patterns on the walls, her eyes wide. "It's not speaking, it's showing us." The walls displayed images of the architect's creations spreading across the galaxy, subjugating civilizations and harvesting entire worlds. The images shifted, showing a massive construct, a ship the size of a planet, awakening from its slumber. "They're not just builders," Yates said, his voice heavy with realization. "They're conquerors." The orb's pulses intensified, and the dormant machines in the chamber began to stir. "They know we're here," Singh shouted. The Lena Marquez moved steadily through uncharted space, the void stretching endlessly before it. The data recovered from the rogue machine's core pointed toward a distant star system, a place where the architect's influence seemed to linger. It was an invitation and a warning. On the bridge, Yates stood with Dr. Amara Singh and Lieutenant Mira Zhao, studying the star map projected by the Watcher's technology. The destination was marked by a flickering yellow glow, indicating a system teetering on the edge of collapse. "This could be a trap," Zhao said, her tone cautious. "Or it could be the key to understanding the architects," Singh replied. "If we're going to stop this from happening to other worlds, we need to know what we're dealing with." Yates nodded. "Set course for the system. Whatever's out there, we need answers." As the team moved deeper into the structure, they discovered chambers filled with partially constructed machines. Unlike the rogue constructs they had encountered before, these machines were incomplete, their forms twisted and skeletal. "They're waiting for something," Zhao said, examining one of the dormant machines. The team reached the core of the spire, a massive chamber dominated by a pulsating orb of energy suspended in the air. The orb emitted rhythmic pulses that matched the interference field surrounding the planet. "This is the source," Singh said, her hands trembling as she scanned the orb. "It's generating the signal that's keeping the machines dormant." As they approached the orb, the chamber trembled and the walls came alive with light. A voice echoed through the space, deep and resonant, speaking in a language that none of them recognized. "What is it saying?" Zhao asked, her weapon raised. Singh stared at the shifting patterns on the walls, her eyes wide. "It's not speaking, it's showing us." The walls displayed images of the architect's creations spreading across the galaxy, subjugating civilizations and harvesting entire worlds. The images shifted, showing a massive construct, a ship the size of a planet, awakening from its slumber. "They're not just builders," Yates said, his voice heavy with realization. "They're conquerors." The orb's pulses intensified, and the dormant machines in the chamber began to stir. "They know we're here," Singh shouted. The team raced back through the corridors as the spire came alive. Machines activated around them, their crimson cores glowing as they tore free from their cradles. Tendrils of energy lashed out, striking the walls and floor as the team narrowly avoided their reach. "Get to the ship," Yates yelled, firing his weapon at the advancing constructs. The crew fought their way to the surface, boarding the Lena Marquez just as the machines burst through the spire's exterior. Zhao powered up the engines, and the ship lifted off, dodging blasts of energy as it escaped the planet's atmosphere. As the Lena Marquez moved away from Droska 4, the spire emitted a massive pulse of energy that spread across the system. The dormant machines on the planet's surface came to life, their forms rising into the air like a swarm of locusts. "They're mobilizing," Singh said, her voice filled with dread. The data collected from the spire revealed the architect's ultimate plan, a network of planetary factories designed to create an unstoppable army of machines. The network was dormant for now, But the awakening of Droska 4 was just the beginning. "They're not just a threat to us," Yates said, staring at the holographic map. "They're a threat to the entire galaxy." The architect's machines began spreading from Droska 4, their energy signatures detected in neighboring systems. The Lena Marquez raced to warn other civilizations, sharing the data they had recovered and rallying allies to the cause. But the architects were ancient, their knowledge far beyond anything humanity or its allies could comprehend. The resistance faced impossible odds as the machines advanced, consuming worlds and leaving only desolation in their wake. "We need to take the fight to them," Yates said during a strategy meeting. "If we wait for them to come to us, it'll be too late." Singh nodded. The data from the spire mentioned a central hub, a place where the architect's consciousness resides. "If we can find it, we might be able to shut them down." The crew set their course for the hub, knowing it would be the most dangerous mission they had ever undertaken. As the Lena Marquez entered the uncharted depths of the galaxy, the weight of Lena's sacrifice hung heavy in their hearts. Her legacy had brought humanity to the stars, but the challenges ahead would test them in ways they had never imagined. The Lena Marquez navigated through the darkest regions of the galaxy, its crew driven by the knowledge that their mission would either save countless worlds or mark the end of resistance. The coordinates from Droska 4 led to a massive structure floating in the void, a construct so large it rivaled a planet in size. This was the architect's hub, the central core of their network. Its surface was alive with shifting patterns of light, and massive tendrils of energy extended from it, connecting to distant star systems. "That's it," Yates said, his voice heavy with awe and dread. "It's not just a hub," Singh said, scanning the structure. "It's a factory, a command center, and something more. It's alive." The ship was pulled into the hub by an invisible force, its systems struggling against the overwhelming power of the architects. As the Lena Marquez entered the interior, the crew was met with a sight that defied understanding. A vast, endless chamber filled with glowing machinery, each component working in perfect harmony. "This is the heart of their operation," Zhao said. "If we destroy it, we shut them down. Or we wake them up," Yates replied grimly. Confrontation with the architects. The crew disembarked, making their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the hub. The air hummed with energy, and the walls shifted as if responding to their presence. At the center of the structure, they found the core, a massive sphere of light suspended in a web of energy. It pulsed rhythmically, its glow illuminating the chamber. As the team approached, the core emitted a deep, resonant voice that filled their minds. "You are brave to come here, children of Earth," it said, "but bravery will not save you." The core projected images of countless civilizations falling to the architects, their worlds consumed and their people enslaved by the machines. "Why are you doing this?" Yates demanded. "We are perfection," the core replied. "We bring order to chaos. Your resistance is futile." Lena's voice echoed in Yates's mind. "Humanity's strength isn't in perfection. It's in our ability to fight for each other." Yates raised the device, salvaged from Droska C4, a makeshift weapon built from the Watcher's technology. "You might bring order, but we bring freedom, the final stand." The core retaliated, activating the hub's defenses. Machines surged into the chamber, their crimson energy clashing with the blue pulses fired by the resistance. The crew fought desperately, holding the line as Yates and Singh worked to overload the core. "This is it!" Singh shouted, inputting the final command. The core's energy flared, and the entire structure began to tremble. The tendrils of light connecting the hub to the galaxy started to retract, their power severed by the overload. "You cannot destroy what you do not understand," the core boomed, its voice distorted. "Maybe not," Yates said, "but we can stop you." With a final surge of power, the core imploded, sending a shockwave through the hub. The machines collapsed, their energy extinguished. "Get to the ship," Yates shouted as the chamber began to collapse. The crew raced back to the Lena Marquez, narrowly escaping as the hub disintegrated. Outside, the structure crumbled into a field of debris, its tendrils severed and its light extinguished. The architect's fall. The destruction of the hub sent ripples across the galaxy. The architect's network collapsed, their machines falling silent on every world they had touched. Civilizations that had lived in fear for centuries emerged from the shadows, their freedom restored. On board the Lena Marquez, the crew watched as the debris field drifted into the void. The cost had been immense, but the architect's reign was over. "What now?" Zhao asked, her voice quiet. Yates stared at the star map, which now displayed a galaxy free of the architect's influence. "We go home," he said, "but we stay ready. There's always another battle waiting." Epilogue. Lena's legacy. The Lena Marquez returned to Earth to a hero's welcome. The Watcher's network remained active, its light a symbol of resilience and unity. Statues of Lena Marquez were erected in cities around the world, her story a reminder of what humanity could achieve when united. Yates, now an older man, stood in Unity Square beneath one such statue. He gazed up at Lena's likeness, her face frozen in determination. "You'd have been proud, Lena," he said softly. As the stars above twinkled brightly, a faint pulse emanated from the Watcher's network, a reminder that the galaxy was vast and humanity's journey was far from over. The end.